The Bolivian government invites losing opposition candidate to join an international election audit. Editor of independent news site The Gray Zone has been detained for 2 days by Washington, D.C. police. We talked to his lawyer about his arrest. And the UK is now on course for an election on December 12th. From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Camila Escalante. Bolivia's recently re-elected Vice President Álvaro García Linera has invited the opposition candidate Carlos Mesa, who lost to President Evo Morales, to join in an international election audit by the Organization of American States to clear up any doubts about the election result.
Carlos Mesa has started a campaign of aggression and of burning institutions, the burning of ballot boxes, and even a campaign against the popular vote itself. The best way to clarify doubts, the doubts that some had about the result of October 20, is to perform an audit of the official vote count that determines whether the alleged fraud exists or not.
Our correspondent in La Paz, Freddy Morales, has more.
The government of President Evo Morales says it is still waiting for the opposition candidate Carlos Mesa, who came second in the elections on October the 20th, to decide if he will take part in the audit to be carried out by the Organization of American States and other countries. That audit is meant to examine alleged irregularities in the election, and especially during the count. Carlos Mesa today asked if the government would be prepared not to recognize the results published by the Electoral Authority until that audit is completed. The Minister of Communications, Manuel Canelas, replied that, of course, if the government has invited international bodies to take part in an in-depth audit of the whole election process, then naturally the government accepts that the results of such an audit will be binding. And so they will continue to wait for Carlos Mesa to agree to take part so that the audit can begin as soon as possible. We are expecting social movements to gather here shortly for a vigil in front of the House of the People, which is the seat of government, to support the president, as opposition parties are threatening to surround this whole area. The social movements that support the government are also mobilizing in other parts of the country to defend the results of the election, which showed a victory for President Morales in the first round.
Argentina's president-elect Alberto Fernandez has promised to put an end to the rising level of hunger and poverty in his country, but he said it will need an effort from everybody. Fernandez was on visit to the northern province of Tucumán, where his Peronist ally, Juan Manzur, was being sworn in for a second term as government. Fernandez won the presidency in Sunday's election with 48% of the vote.
We are going to face hard times because we have to guarantee all those workers' rights. And we have to give Argentina a new life within a very complex situation. A situation with high levels of debt. We are going to roll up our sleeves to ensure that not one more person goes hungry in Argentina. But it's not a president who can do that. It's not Alberto and Cristina. It's all of us together.
One day after being elected president of Argentina, Alberto Fernandez met with outgoing President Mauricio Macri to discuss the transition of power.
The people celebrated the victory of Alberto Fernandez as president. A feeling of hope was palpable in all streets across the country. Many describe it as an oasis of peace during a time of hunger and recession, as they look towards the end of the neoliberal rule.
Muy emocionante.
It's the end of 4 years of darkness. It's the end of neoliberalism. I'm very happy.
I'm happy. We've been waiting for this moment for 4 years. They were killing our people, and our people answered. We took to the streets, and now we are going back to better times.
After the celebrations, reality strikes back, and plans for a smooth transition of power amidst the crisis must be implemented. The road ahead for Alberto Fernandez will not be easy. On Monday, the outgoing government announced new economic measures and tightened currency controls, hoping to avoid a further collapse of the economy.
We must be alert on how the transition takes place until December 10, when Fernandez takes power. We hope that rational thought stays at the forefront. We hope he will implement a model that once again values workers and national production.
There is a lot to do. Voters are hoping that the political class takes on their historic role so that our children can have a better, more just and more sovereign nation.
President-elect Alberto Fernández called his meeting with Mauricio Macri positive. This was the kickoff to a transition that will culminate on December 10.
It's evident that Argentina is heading for a new era for the entire region. It's very important that Argentina change course. We hope that Fernandez can put an end to recent history and bring back production and jobs, as well as reduce hunger.
Alberto Fernandez now has to face the challenge of rebuilding an Argentina that has been destroyed by neoliberalism, that is, under a deep recession and holds one of the highest rates of poverty in its history. The people have put their hopes of a better nation in his hands.
Argentina's Rafael Grossi has been elected to lead the United Nations nuclear watchdog, becoming the first head from Latin America. Grossi, who is Argentina's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency, will now become Director General of the organization following the death of the former head, Yukiya Amano, of Japan in July. The IAEA is responsible, among other things, of monitoring the implementation of the increasingly unstable Iran nuclear deal. Iran has been decreasing its commitments under the 2015 agreement due to the U.S.'s withdrawal from the deal and following the reintroduction of sanctions on Iran by the Trump administration. We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a few. Welcome back. Journalist and editor of the Gray Zone Project, Max Blumenthal, was arrested on Friday by Washington, D.C. police and jailed for 2 days. The arrest came after Blumenthal reported on Venezuelan opposition violence, which took place outside of Venezuela's Washington, D.C. embassy in April and May. During that time, activists from the groups including Answer Coalition, Popular Resistance, and Code Pink formed an embassy protection collective. A small handful of alternative media outlets and journalists, including the Gray Zone and Telesur's Alina Duarte, were on site as the Washington-backed opposition attempted to illegally seize the property. The collective inside of the embassy and journalists suffered harassment and violence by supporters of the opposition, who also blocked the delivery of food and supplies from entering the building.
To see it for myself.
At the Telstar office in Washington, and with us now is attorney for Max Blumenthal, Bill Moran. Thank you for coming on, Bill. Max was arrested.
Happy to be here.
Max was arrested for 2 whole days. Why was he arrested to begin with? What are these charges against him, and how is he doing now?
So he was arrested, if we're being honest, because of his critical journalism about the Venezuelan opposition and the coup attempt, and his critical journalism and dissenting viewpoint on these positions. And, you know, as a country, we're not supposed to be jailing journalists. I find this deeply troubling. The claims against him are entirely false. It's a false pretense. And so what he's accused of is allegedly kicking somebody at 3 in the morning. He did no such thing. The evidence will show that he's an innocent man and that he's just being harassed as a result of his journalism. It's notable, just hours before he was arrested, the Gray Zone had actually republished a report showing that Juan Guaido and his team had were being paid, their salaries were being paid by USAID. And so this appears to be a form of retaliation. It stands out that this case was initially brought 6 months ago against a co-defendant, and that they have only now decided to arrest Max, which shows that there's no case, no credibility behind these accusations. And I think people should be outraged. We shouldn't be attacking journalists. We should be lifting them up in this country.
So the arrest warrant was actually 5 months old. How is it that they suddenly thought to attempt to SWAT-style raid his home? And also, what were the conditions like when he was incarcerated?
Sure. So, yes, the arrest warrant, from what I can gather, was from 5 months ago, and I believe that they did some new arrest warrant. And again, this is an allegation of simple assault, a misdemeanor, right? These are cases that usually don't even move forward to prosecution. And not only are they prosecuting him, and now 6 months into a case, but they SWAT-style raided his house. They had 6 people go around the back of his house, aggressively entered, tossed him in the back of a paddy wagon, and then once they got him to district, he asked to speak to an attorney. He asked for a phone call, and they denied him his right for a phone call. So nobody knew where he was for actually quite a few hours. And they could have arraigned him that day. They didn't arraign him that day and released him then. Instead, they waited a whole extra day. And then in the arraignment, they had him arraigned probably last out of the group, last or second to the last out of 100 defendants. So he didn't get out until 7 p.m. on Saturday, right? And so now in that situation, Max was locked up from cage to cage with, chains and it actually cut his foot. He has cuts all over his ankles and on his hands from the cuffs and the anklets. And, we're not supposed to be doing that to journalists. And it stands out. If this happened in Venezuela, or if this happened, let's say, in Putin's Russia, and the whole world would be up in arms. There was actually a story a few days ago that I believe Human Rights Watch and Ken Roth were really keen on, that a journalist in Venezuela was arrested for, I believe, 6 hours. Max was arrested for 34 hours, and that's happening right here in Washington, D.C. It's happening right here in America, right? Where's Ken Roth's statement? Where are his sympathies for journalists who are in the field, reporting at risk to themselves, at great risk to themselves? People should be appalled.
Bill, over the course of several weeks, we saw a number of activists join the Venezuelan embassy protectors in solidarity with the legitimate government of Venezuela and the Venezuelan people. That included high-profile people such as Jesse Jackson, who also went to deliver food. Has anyone else, to your knowledge, been targeted?
To my knowledge, nobody besides Max and the 4 individuals who were arrested for remaining inside the embassy, and the charges there are highly questionable. So they couldn't say that they were trespassing because they had permission to be there. They couldn't claim anything else. So for those 4 individuals, they're claiming that they interfered with the government's ability to carry out some sort of function of protection. And the statute that's being used there, I don't even believe it's ever been used to prosecute anybody before. I could be wrong on that, but my understanding is that it hasn't been. And so the point here is, if you have a position that is, a dissenting position against U.S. imperialism and against, intervention in South America, you run the risk of being targeted. And that's deeply concerning, particularly with the history in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s of intervention after intervention in South America that, just caused incredible human harm. And we know about these things. And you have the same cast of characters behind a lot of those too, right? You see they dredged up, Elliot Abrams, for goodness sakes. It's history's repeating itself, but in quite a troubling way. But even then, would be really astounding that a journalist would be arrested. And isn't it convenient that it's one of the only journalists in the entire United States, and probably the most prominent or one of the most prominent, who have spoken out about the attempted coup in Venezuela, have reported critically on the opposition, that's the person who gets arrested on these highly dubious charges? You know, everybody should ask themselves a really serious question. What is going on here? Have we not jumped the shark?
Thank you so much for your time, Bill. We've been speaking to Bill Moran. He is the attorney for Max Blumenthal, who was recently arrested for 2 days, now released. All the best to Max. Now on to other stories. Public assistance will increase by $25 for the poor and elderly in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So said Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonzales, who was speaking at a land distribution ceremony as general elections are constitutionally due by March 2021.
You know, yesterday I announced at Victoria Park that from January, public assistance going up by $25. So those who are over 65 who get in $250, they're going to get $275. And those who under $250 who are under 65 and who get $225 going to get $250. Let me tell you this. I will go to all the lengths to take care of the old and the poor in this country. And anybody who don't like it, they could always vote against me.
Guinea-Bissau President Jose Mario Vaz has fired his entire government in a presidential decree. Vaz said that the decision was based on a serious political crisis in the country, which was preventing the normal operations of some institutions. This comes barely a week after the Prime Minister denounced a coup attempt as police violently repressed an opposition protest. Reports say that one protester was killed and several others injured on Saturday during a demonstration which called for a delay to the November general elections. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. Well, it looks like Britain is heading for pre-Christmas elections after Prime Minister Boris Johnson won Parliament's approval for polls to be held on December 12th. This in a legislative bid to fast-track the Brexit agreement. Earlier on Tuesday, Johnson's bill was approved without a vote at its second reading. After he cleared that first hurdle, legislators then voted against an amendment which sought to change the election date to December 9th. And a short while ago, Johnson's wish for December 12th elections was granted after MPs voted in favor of it by 438 to 20. The bill now goes to the House of the Lords, where it isn't expected to encounter any significant opposition. This means it could become law by the end of the week. It would set Britain on the path of holding its first December elections in nearly a century.
There is only one way to get Brexit done. We are left with no choice but to go to the country to break free from this impasse and to allow us all to submit, as we must, in all humility, to the judgment of the electorate, and to allow us to make our case, and above all, to allow a new and revitalised Parliament with a new mandate to deliver on the will of the people and get Brexit done. Because that new Parliament, in just a few weeks' time, will have before it a great new deal with the EU.
Prime Minister of Lebanon, Saad al-Hariri, has announced his resignation following nationwide demonstrations that have been ongoing for nearly 2 weeks. Hariri sought to end the protests last week through a set of reforms to tackle corruption and a worsening economy, but they failed to satisfy demonstrators.
For 13 days, the Lebanese people have waited for a decision, for a political solution that would stop the deterioration of our country. I have tried during this period to find a way out, to listen to the people and to protect the country from economic, social, and other dangers. Today, I will not hide it from you. I have reached a dead end. It is time for us to have a big shock to solve the crisis. I'm going to the Abda Palace to present my resignation to President Michel Aoun and to the Lebanese people in all regions. This is in response to the will of many Lebanese who took to the streets to demand change and out of commitment to the need for providing a safety net that protects the country in this historic moment.
Though Lebanese protesters have welcomed Prime Minister al-Hariri's resignation, they say that they will continue to protest until all of their demands are met.
Hariri's resignation is the beginning of realizing what we are working for. This is not yet enough. We surely want more than this. We want to continue with the remaining steps.
I want to say that we are remaining in the square despite Hariri's resignation, because from the beginning we said all of them means all of them. We are staying in the squares until they all go down.
French politicians have been blamed for a mosque attack which took place in Bayonne. On Monday, a gunman tried to set a mosque in the southern French city on fire and then seriously injured 2 people before he got arrested later. The French Muslim Council said that the attack on the mosque was a result of statements by irresponsible politicians who have been lately bashing Islam and Muslims.
This can lead to unbalanced people trying to harm Muslims, targeting mosques and places of worship in general. So if our politicians did a little better, I think the climate we have now will be a much more peaceful and serene one.
Rescue teams in Western Cameroon have recovered at least 22 bodies from a landslide, while 34 people remain missing. On Monday night, heavy rainfall caused a hill to collapse, destroying nearly a dozen homes. The Minister of Centralization and Local Development has since revealed that over $40,000 have been released to help the local community. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telestarenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telestar English, I'm Camila Escalante. Thanks for watching.